Welcome to Lunchtime Live. I'm Leslie.
I'm Ed.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. Just as a heads up, I changed the latency on the video, so the comments are going to come in later than ever.
Oh,
but we're
great.
trying to. We have a few technical issues here, so we're gonna get through it. So say hello, everybody, in the comments when you get here. We're so glad that you are here with us, or if you're watching after the fact, please say hi in the comments. We'd be so grateful. So today we are continuing our conversation about humility as an extension of compassion, because we're doing a whole thing on compassion that's kind of permeating kind of everything we're talking about. We always try to be very strategic when we have a sermon series. We're like, we're going to talk about it here. We're going to talk about it here. And I feel like this series has been the most natural and easy to bring into, I mean, literally every conversation I have all week.
It's easy. Yeah. It all winds up, every road.
I've used the word compassion more than I think I ever have in my life, which has been amazing. You know, like it's really transformed how I've been thinking during the week, which is exciting.
Yeah.
You know, to be learning along with everything.
It's fun in life because we do tend to be, I mean, I heard this statistic the other day, which I can't believe, that people actually may touch their phones more than 2,000 times a day. There you go.
I can
You're on your way.
That, yeah.
But I guess my point in this is like we're constantly moving from thing to thing.
Yeah.
And it's really it's a really great opportunity to just kind of soak in one thing.
Yeah.
Right? In one topic like compassion.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing.
And I have to say, when I was thinking about compassion, I wouldn't have necessarily thought of humility as an element of it.
Yeah.
But now that you've sort of talked us through it, I think it's like, well, of course. Well, of course there's an element of humility and compassion.
Yeah. You know, it started, I think, with Karen Armstrong's book, 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life. And she's got a chapter which is titled something like How Little We Know.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's this idea like we think we know things about other people, and yet we really don't.
Yes.
We make attributions. We make judgments. We make them so quickly we don't even know we were making them.
Yeah,
and
these
before we know it,
assumptions, right?
that other person has become diminished in our eyes. So humility is a way of checking ourselves while we're doing that.
Yeah.
Which I think is a fantastic, new, fresh way of approaching people.
Well, and there's that tempting thing of thinking we know how someone is going to react to
Right.
something. I feel like that's a very slippery slope.
Oh, you know, so funny you say that, because I worked for a time on a staff, and there was a colleague of mine who used to say, he would say, well, I want you to visit such and such a person, you know, in the congregation. And he would say, and I know exactly what they're going to say when.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, it was like he as if he knew them so perfectly. And I thought, you know, I think our work is really about trying to find out the surprises beyond that, right?
Right.
Don't settle for that.
Yeah.
I mean, at one level, we might think we know what people are going to say because we create the conditions for it. And then, lo and behold, they say exactly what we expect.
I never thought of it that way.
So if we can step away from that, and that takes a little humility.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because we have to give up that, oh, well, you know, I have a sense of I already know what's going to happen there.
Right. And sometimes I feel like when we say that, we're not necessarily saying a good thing about that person. It's not like, oh, they're going to be delighted.
I know.
It's not usually the situation in that conversation.
It really is not. No.
No, not usually.
And, you know, when I hear myself say that, like, oh, I knew it was going to turn out that way. Oh, my gosh. I'm thinking, I gave up before I even started.
That is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It is
We
kind of
settle.
Yes. Yes.
Don't settle.
Don't settle. Don't settle. Let people surprise you.
Yes.
Or at least hope they will. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed, everybody.
A good surprise.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a day already,
Just saying.
folks. Yeah, right? No, but that's the thing. But this going for it. So one other element of humility that I connected with when because we recorded the message together last week for the online worship service, which is still
And
available on our YouTube channel, YouTube Media. Or no, Roundhill Media, sorry. I only had half a cup of coffee this morning. Is the idea that humility unlocks curiosity. And since this is apparently Leslie sharing hour, for me, I've struggled historically with cultivating curiosity in myself for other people. I get very caught up in perception of how I'm perceived. So I'm very worried about like how I'm doing, and it distracts me from connection and from curiosity and from asking questions. And so for me, this idea that it is an act of that by fostering humility, we're fostering curiosity. It kind of unlocks curiosity in us.
Yeah. Beautifully said.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
But it's that I really have thought about that long and hard, because for me as a collaborator with you on all these media projects, I have to be fully present in our conversations, because you throw out stuff that I wasn't anticipating, and I need to be fully listening and fully engaged so that I can highlight that, or I can lift up whatever gems you say, right? And fully be a participant.
Improvisational spirit.
Yeah, right. But it's I feel like it's been a really wonderful experience being on the other side of the desk from you, because it's I can't I was gonna swear I can't phone it in is what we'll call it. Oh, sorry. I can't half show up, right? I have to be here. I can't be distracted by whatever 300 things I could be distracted by.
Yeah.
And I think that has fostered something that I'm excited by. I think that I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that experience I've had.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what makes these conversations that we have really rich, right? And so that we are listening for those things that we hadn't expected to think or say, and we want to be responsive to them. Right. And yeah, that does take humility. I think what you're describing is, we're seeking to be great listeners and really receiving that everything that the other person is saying. And that's such an important spirit to take out into the world. Right. Because we all know that experience of being with someone who's really just waiting to speak.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, you said that yesterday.
It's kind of like we're white noise, and then that other person senses a gap and immediately takes that over.
Right.
And we know when that happens, it's not a great experience.
Yeah. It's not a good look.
No. Optics are all wrong.
Right. Yeah.
And the audio is not great either. So.
That was a tech joke. I liked that. That was really good.
I'm trying.
I'm trying. For our friends who are here with us live, we'd love to hear your thoughts on humility, on curiosity. What does that bring up for you? What are you thinking about when it comes to all of this? If you haven't dove into the topic with us, there's a lot on our YouTube channel if you want to check out some more. We have podcasts and all sorts of good stuff on compassion in general. Where are we heading next with compassion?
Well, it's been, as we said, it's been wonderful. We're already about 7 weeks into this experience, which seems unbelievable. We were talking about how we're kind of moving through autumn in a rather rapid way, right?
Yes.
So one of the things now is to think about how compassion can be accessed through the language that we use. So it's not only this sense of humility, but it's just how we speak to one another. It feels to me, sometimes when I use the word compassion or I hear the word compassion, I think there's a sense that we're talking about some big major social project.
Sure.
And it can be that. It can be a social justice movement that can be driven by compassion. In fact, I think that the civil rights movement in this country actually was mobilized by compassion. And Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was always really great at being on point and saying, this is a movement designed to liberate everyone. That was a compassionate attitude. But that's a huge thing. And a lot of people are, especially these days, are thinking, well, how can I start out with something a little more manageable, right? It's language. The one thing we're using it right now, is language. And it's how, as Karen Armstrong puts it, how shall we speak to one another? Reading that chapter in her book, 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life, made me realize that the letters that we have in our New Testament, in the Christian New Testament, are so much about language. It's about be encouraging, speak words of love, be bold, but also make sure, speak the truth in love. That's the defining thing. Some people can be good about speaking the truth, but it doesn't feel very good.
Right.
Somehow the delivery is not great. Content great,
Right.
but not so much for the delivery.
Yeah. So it's like, how do you find that balance of, because, you want people in your life to be honest
Yes.
with you, especially if they're like, here's a thing you might want
Yeah.
to consider.
Uh-oh.
Right. And then, but then that is communicated with love and not just like thump. It's a sound effect for bluntness, in case you're wondering.
Something really heavy dropping.
Yeah, exactly.
The truth.
Well, they do call it a truth bomb. So
That's right. Oh, yeah. I think that we do want that in our lives. We want to be open enough so that people know that they can come to us and say, there's something here that I really need to tell you. I want to give a shout out to Beth Cooper. Now, Beth is not alive on this side of life. She has moved on to the greater experience of life now. She was a remarkable person. It was in one of my congregations. And I don't think I'd been serving this congregation for very long, and Beth said she needed to see me. She said it in a way that indicated that this might be one of those heavy moments of truth telling.
Yes.
She came into my office. She sat down. She looked at me and she said, "I'm angry with you."
Okay.
Okay, you've got my full attention right now. Okay. And she said, "Here's why." And I said, "Hey, first of all, I really appreciate that you took the time to speak to me personally." I gave her a little bit of explanation about it. There was maybe something that was a little misunderstanding and all that. Anyway, we talked it through. I never, ever, it was such a clear, defining moment. It was like there was a lot of extra oxygen in the room because she was so open and so honest. But there was absolutely no malice in her at all.
Yeah.
And we just had this wonderful connection over 14 years. And but I often thought back, it stemmed from that moment where she came into my office to say, "I'm angry with you."
Yeah.
Instead of acting it out in other ways or telling other people, but just having that spirit. And I do think it takes some courage for us to speak the truth to others, right? And to get the language right. We want to make sure that we're being compassionate as we're truth telling. So this is kind of where we're moving now, how to access compassion in the language that we use during the week.
And it feels very much like an extension from yesterday's conversation, right? So like, like the way it's been organized and the way you've chosen to present it to us is feels linear, right? So we started with a beginner's mind and we've moved through, and now with humility and then moving towards, like we're kind of building up a sort of a tool belt of things.
That's a great image.
In a very linear way.
Yeah, it's evolving, right, as it's going along.
Yeah.
Well, we've had so many moments in our services where the music that you've chosen has been in conversation. It's happening constantly with the message.
Did my job.
Loving that job.
Yes.
And it makes it so much richer because there's a lot about compassion, I think, in these themes that's almost better communicated through something like music. It gets to a deeper level of it. We know that for sure,
Of
right?
course, yes.
The music goes to a very deep level.
Absolutely.
So I think that's been part of the richness of this journey. And it is sometimes it's a little moment of serendipity when one message just nicely follows into the next one.
Yes.
Right? That does happen every once in a while.
Yes, for sure.
And we like to think that those accidents or moments of serendipity happen more frequently when we plan as opposed to just
For sure.
crossing fingers and hoping.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. We hope for the best.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it keeps evolving. And, it's funny you say about just going back for a second. I'm not sure that I would have included a chapter or a piece on humility when I was thinking about compassion initially. And yet after rereading her book, Karen Armstrong's book, I realized how central that is, and also how important it is to give us really actionable ways of implementing that. And I think so in her book, it's funny where she starts with humility and then she goes right to language, because it's as if she's saying, okay, now try it out. We've talked about humility. Just try it out with the way you speak to your neighbors, friends, someone at the store or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I like that. As someone who uses language as kind of your main tool in your role. Like I think of, I use music, right? And I feel like you very much paint with language. How did the reading of that section change anything for you or confirm anything for you?
Specifically the section on humility or the one on language?
The one on language is what I'm most specific about.
Yeah, I think it underscored for me, like many times, how important it is that community development can start with the simple act of how we speak to each other. And I also was thinking about this because, if you I'm sure you get these, but if you get this nice encouraging note,
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
It's the best thing ever.
how good is that?
It's the best thing. I keep them, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a
always
box.
do. Keep the shoebox. We used to call it in our family the shoebox.
Yeah.
Because you have an old shoebox, and I used to keep all of those notes in there.
Yes.
And that's a really important thing. And there was a really lovely note that we actually all received this past week, somebody sending something to say, just love the work that you're doing and, keep doing it, whatever. And,
Amazing,
and
yeah.
that counts for so much. There is a, I don't know if it's a technique or a practice that companies use sometimes called the rule of 3, sometimes the rule of 5, which is that you need to say 3 encouraging things before you say that thing.
The room for improvement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to need more than 3
You might want to ratchet it up a little depending on the
on the person and their delicate ego.
there you go. Exactly. Yeah. I'm a rule of 10 person myself. But there is a truth to that because there's something about us that hears criticism way more powerfully than we hear
It's
the word of encouragement,
10
right?
times louder. It's
Isn't
so
it?
loud. Someone can say 3 nice things and say, "What? I'm never going to remember that."
I had a wonderful teacher at Union Theological Seminary for preaching, and he said, inevitably preachers sometimes preach on sin, the
Right,
word
right.
sin. He goes, trust me, use the word sin once, people hear it 10 times.
Really?
And
That's
I
one of those.
always loved that. So I've thought about that for a lot of other words. You can say some things and people will hear it 10 times. And that is something that you really have to take into consideration in a community.
Yeah.
Even if a community wants to do great things in the world and they want to add to peace and diminish violence and all of that, you know what? Practice first with getting the language right.
How do you think your relationship with language has evolved through your ministry, through your career?
Oh, I can give you an answer to that question.
Oh, do. I'm excited now.
I am more interested in silence than I've ever been.
Oh, that is a good answer. Tell me more.
I was waiting for somebody to ask me this question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that as my interest in making art has increased, my attraction to silence has increased. And I'm now, thinking more and more about how to communicate more with less language. Or how to create more and more silence in my life out of which the words can come. I think preachers run into a real habit of just constantly absorbing words all the time, thinking that that's going to provide help with the creation of a message for Sunday. But what you wind up with is sometimes a lot of chatter. And silence for me has now been, it is like soaking in a bath. So I think that is a shift that's happened during the pandemic, but I think it was building for a while. And occasionally I'll come across stories of, people who use language for a living, who kind of make a little crossing in their lives where they decide they're just going to use less and less of it and try to see if they can be more impactful by using less.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, as you say, for someone who, works with words to becoming more and more involved in silence.
Yeah. I have kind of a random question, but do you have a word that's used in everyday life that you greatly dislike? Do you have a pet peeve word that you try to avoid at all costs in conversation or emails or whatever?
I this is not going to be new, but since I just used it about 3 minutes ago and was aware of myself using it.
Oh, yeah?
The word like, which is around a lot.
Yes. Yes.
And I use it. I use it. But to me, it's like words that become filler.
Yes.
So this word doesn't really carry any deep meaning after a while. Mm-hmm. It just becomes something that. So I think what I would do, however, is answer your question with another word.
Yeah.
So that's the filler words are something I try to stay away from because that indicates to me that I probably don't know what in the world I'm talking about. I'm just jamming some words in there.
You're filling the silence.
I'm filling the silence.
Yeah.
But I will tell you the word that has actually begun to irritate me a little.
That's exactly what I'm hoping for.
And it is the word amazing.
Really?
And I use that word. Full disclosure.
I would never guessed. So what is it about amazing?
I think we have used the word amazing to describe almost everything.
Things that are not
really
do not
amazing.
amaze you.
And I started noticing myself using it.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's fundamentally, I think amazing and amazement and these are great words.
Yes.
I love the word.
Sure.
But it's just that it's become so ever present that I'm concerned that in the way that I've used it from time to time, I noticed that I was using it in emails. That is an amazing email. No, I wasn't saying that. But I thought, hey, back away from this word a little bit.
Step away from amazing.
It needs to be refreshed. Because fundamentally, I like that word.
It's a good word.
It is a wonderful word, and it's very appropriate in a lot of circumstances.
Sure.
But I guess I've been wondering, Leslie, why is it, for me, I'll just ask it of myself, why was it that I have been feeling that I need to use that word so much?
Yeah.
Or why does it come up so often, especially in email? I think it's another one of those things.
Yeah.
And yet probably doesn't belong. So anyway, I'm thinking that through.
I like that very much. It's interesting because I feel it's almost like maybe it's diluting the meaning of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we always have to watch that.
Right.
Right? Because if something is amazing, that means it's not in the realm of the ordinary, I would think. Mm-hmm. It stands out. It's worthy of added attention. And we really ought to pause before something that's amazing and give it our full consideration.
I like that. Mine is just. The word just. Not in the sense of justice.
Right.
But in the sense of, this is just blankety blank. And this was one of those situations where it was pointed out to me, not that I used it a ton or I had noticed I used it a ton before, but I was reading an article and they were saying that people often use that word to soften what they're saying, saying, if I can just make a suggestion, or I'm just doing this, or I'm just doing that. And it's actually kind of cutting yourself off at the knees.
Yeah.
And it's a very unempowering word. It was pointed out that it's a thing women do often in professional situations to kind of like soften how we enter something.
Use that word.
Yeah, we use, and then it's,
that's interesting.
I try not to use it. Sometimes I do use it when I really am trying to soften what I'm saying, which can be good and important.
Yep.
And I try to use it less and less, especially in this work environment where I don't need to do that, which is great.
That is great.
It's great, folks. It's great. And so that word just is, I feel like it just kind of, it diminishes whatever we're talking about. And sometimes that can be on purpose. But sometimes when we just kind of try to like sneak into a situation or like tiptoe. When you're tiptoeing, I find myself, I've got like 4 justs in an email. I'm like, okay, I could probably take out at least 2 of these.
Right. And be just fine.
I
wrote an email last night. I used the word just. I deleted that thing.
Good for you.
Gone. Got it out of there.
It's an unempowering word.
It is. It is. What's really interesting, Leslie, is the number of prayers that I have heard over the years that have begun.
Oh my gosh.
Did you know that I was going to say this? Oh, Lord, we just. And then it goes from there. And every sentence can sometimes begin with that we just.
It's just a trope now. It really has.
I want to say, set yourself free from that word.
You guys.
I'm so glad you mentioned that word. Are we not going to be walking around hyper conscious of our language here?
Oh,
for the
now we
next-
are. Yeah, no, we've messed up our whole week.
Can't say anything now.
It's just fine.
It's just like amazing.
I'm going to get a sign that says that for in here.
Oh, Lordy.
No, we could keep going. We could do an entire podcast episode probably on pet peeve words.
Yep. Oh, my goodness.
That's
yes.
not. I don't think that's what people came here for.
Probably not.
Leslie and Ed rant for half an hour.
We use words. It's probably good every once in a while just to kind of get that out of our system.
Yeah, I
you
feel
know?
better now.
Yeah.
I would never have guessed amazing. I find that to be really interesting.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm particularly protective of that word.
Yeah.
But probably because I've been abusing it myself and thinking, what do you really mean when you say that? That's the deeper question. What am I really trying to say at that moment?
Right. Well, and it's funny too, because I think when we're sending emails to people, tone is so tricky in email and
Yes.
writing. And so we want to be, if we're being encouraging or encouraging, that's what I mean. If we're trying to encourage someone in what they're doing and say, this is great. You can't just be like, this is great, period.
Right.
Because that feels like,
Yeah.
and the idea that we want to hype them up a little bit and really get across the message that you're so happy with what their idea was or whatever, that you kind of have to we have to go a little overboard
Yeah.
to get it
That's a great point.
across without 1,500. Like I'm that person that will accidentally write an email and it's only exclamation points. I don't use a single period.
Yeah. I know what you
I'm
mean.
like, what is that?
Yeah.
But it's because I want to be positive. I want it to come across as encouraging and positive. And it's like sometimes ending a period just feels like,
Yeah. And we do know that we're swamped
right.
with words. So we were trying to do everything we can to say, here's a little word. I want you to stand out. Here's an exclamation point.
Yeah, right.
Hello.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It's an amazing exclamation point.
I started sometimes using italics just to
Right.
give a little jazz it up a little bit.
Good Lord.
This is going to be a whole week talking about language.
Yes, it
We've
is.
opened Pandora's box, folks. 2 language nerds over here going to town.
Lord have mercy on us.
Definitely. Oh, thank you all so much for joining us for
Yes.
another Lunchtime Live, or as we'll call it, Leslie and Ed rant about language. So what this turned into, we're so glad you joined us. And please join us every Monday at noon Eastern for Lunchtime Live, and we will see you.